Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Elevate Leadership Podcast, produced by SC State University 1890 Research and Extension. I'm Elizabeth Mosley Hawkins, Director of Marketing and Communications. But before we move further into today's program, I do want to take a few seconds to tell you about the SC State 1890 program. Now, we provide public service programs and activities on behalf of SC State, and we also conduct problem solving research to address issues impacting South Carolinians. And through our very important work, SC State 1890 innovates and educates to elevate the quality of life and raise the standard of living for all South Carolinians. Elevate Leadership Podcast is part of our programming for community and economic development. And we very much want to develop strong community leaders and entrepreneurs who are well equipped to make a difference in communities where these leaders and entrepreneurs live, work, and play. And we do this by having conversations with leaders and entrepreneurs from various industries with the hope to motivate and inspire experienced leaders to progress in their careers, but to also provide a blueprint for aspiring leaders. And Elevate Leadership is a monthly production. So if you want to watch our other episodes, just check out our YouTube channel where each new series premieres. And you can also listen to us while you're on the go, in between meetings, or maybe while you're finalizing business deals on any of our streaming platforms. And of course, you can always learn more about SC State 1890 on the university's website, just scsu.edu, or check us out on our socials at SC State 1890. Now, our guest today has the pleasure of running probably South Carolina's top tourist seeking destination. And it's definitely recognized as one of the fastest growing cities in America. And I like to say I love going to this city to eat because it has some of the best restaurants. So now, if you haven't, if the name of the city hasn't come to mind yet, then it's none other than beautiful, beautiful Charleston, South Carolina. And serving as its chief executive officer, you might say, is the Honorable Mayor Tecklenburg, John Tecklenburg. Mayor Tecklenburg, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Liz. It's a pleasure to be with you today. It really is. And come down to Charleston anytime, but just be sure to try to spend as much money as you can when you get here.
Oh, I definitely do that when I come down here. Now, Mayor Tecklenburg, you were elected in 2016, and I'd say you have led much of the growth that has happened in Charleston. You have spent much of your career as a businessman and entrepreneur. You hold degrees in chemistry from Georgetown, so that makes you a Hoya.
That's right, Hoya Saxa.
Yes, I grew up in Washington, D.C., well, Maryland. So we have a connection here.
Okay, there you go. But my first college course that I ever took was in computer science at, guess where?
SC State.
You got it.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm a
bulldog
I'm
too.
an honorary bulldog too.
Well, we have to get you some bulldog swag if you don't have any.
There you go. Yeah, I need some. Absolutely.
And I also found that it was interesting that you went to Berklee College of Music.
I did. So I play a little jazz. I'm an aspiring jazz pianist and have been all of my life. And this is funny. You jog another memory of SC State because honestly, when I was growing, let me go back and let folks know that even though I was born in Charleston, my mother was from Orangeburg, and in the mid '60s, we moved to Orangeburg. I was just in grade school, and I ended up going through middle school and high school in Orangeburg. So I'm a OW Bruin, class of '73, and so that's how it happened that I either my junior or senior year in high school, I took a couple of courses over at SC State. But also, the music of the time was mostly, particularly in the South, rock and rhythm and blues. And I wasn't really exposed to a lot of jazz music at home. And I went to see Donald Byrd in a kind of workshop little session he did over at SC State. I'll never forget it. And I was like, oh, wow, this is what jazz is all about. And it kind of inspired me to pursue jazz as well.
Oh, that's so interesting. That's so cool.
Yeah,
So glad that you were able to get that from SC State.
absolutely.
So your chemistry and music, so you're a great right and left brain thinker.
Twister or something like that. Yeah.
Well, Mayor Tecklenburg, we just had to have you on our show because later this summer, SC State will be hosting its ribbon cutting ceremony at our new facility, yes,
Yes.
at 35 Lee Street right down the heart of Charleston.
Right.
We're so excited about it. We've been in Charleston, providing programs to youth and helping some of the farmers in the county there. But we are just so excited that we'll have our permanent home there.
It's so exciting, and if I may say, it's one of the things I'm most proud of since I've become mayor. Because frankly, this project had been sitting on the shelf for some time, and I realized the importance that this could bring to Charleston and improve the connection between us and SC State. So we figured out what we needed to do to get the property transferred and get the construction approved and all like that. So I'm very excited about our groundbreaking coming up.
Yes, thank you so much. And we are just so excited. We've done some walkthroughs there and we're planning our ribbon cutting. And, we really just want to make it a place where all Charlestonians feel comfortable about coming there and learning things as it relates to, community economic development, becoming a leader, sustainable agriculture and natural resources, how to eat properly. We have a food demonstration lab. So we are just super excited.
It's all good, and so many good things are happening right in that section of Charleston, which is the former footprint of the bridges that went to Mount Pleasant, right? And so we've been able to add some affordable housing. Mm-hmm. We're going to break ground, Liz, next month or next couple of months on another affordable housing development. And on the ground floor of it, just a block away from the 1890 Center, we're going to have a minority business incubator. So I think that will tie in well with a lot of programming that you're scheduled to have there and planning to have there. It's going to be a really dynamic synergy between the city and SC State. Again, I'm very excited about it.
Sounds awesome. I mentioned earlier that Charleston is one of the fastest growing American cities. So what are you guys doing so well to attract and retain residents and businesses alike?
Well, Charleston is just, as you've noted, when you open such a special place, the beauty of the place, the history of the place, some of which is a history that's a little difficult to tell, that we are open to tell, and that's an important part of our story at this stage in our history, is to be transparent about what happened here in this city. And with the opening of the International African American Museum next year, that will really help fulfill our ability to tell this whole story of Charleston. We're 350 years old. A lot of things have happened here. You don't see this kind of richness and diversity in other places in the country, really, and the beauty of the place just has attracted people. And I think today's world that young folks particularly are drawn to more urban environments, cities, are all experiencing repopulation and new growth. But if you're in a place like Charleston that's near the ocean and a climate that's fair most of the year round, we're on steroids, I guess you'd say.
Absolutely. Yes, and you mentioned the International African American Museum. We'll be interviewing Dr. Hayward, who is the Chief Operating Officer next
Okay.
week.
Oh,
So,
wonderful.
yeah,
So Liz, do you mind a little personal privilege and let me share one other connection
yes,
with SC State?
absolutely.
So I don't know if you know this, but during the time that we lived in Orangeburg, um, after the terrible tragedy of the Orangeburg massacre, and trying to reknit the community there in Orangeburg, my mother was asked, and she served on the board of SC State.
Oh, wow.
And,
Okay.
and my mother was a very accomplished lady, if I may say, and in fact, somewhat inspired me to be where I am today because my first really active political campaign was helping my mother get elected to Charleston City Council when they moved back to Charleston in the late 70s.
Okay.
And I stayed kind of connected with city politics ever since my mom served. But at the time she was elected, she was still on the board of SC State. And I have this hanging in the mayor's office,
Oh,
and
beautiful.
it's an image of my mother, appreciation award presented to Mrs. Esther Tecklenburg in recognition and appreciation of outstanding achievement in support of education and human relations and for service to humanity. Founders Day, South Carolina State College, March the 3rd, 1985. And of all the things my mother did in her life, and she was a very active and accomplished lady.
Hmm.
She always told me that what gave her the most meaning beyond God and her family in terms of community service was with South Carolina State.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that story with us. And
Yeah.
I'm certain her legacy has made an impact, at this university. So, and I love the fact that you were inspired yourself, to go into politics, and public service.
That's
So,
right.
so tell me, how did you venture into public service? Because you began as a businessman, as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur.
Well, there's I got started on a business career after college to make a living and support a family and all like that. I was always interested in public service though because my parents were so active. They never really did it as a vocation. It was always an avocation, if you will. And so it became with me for quite some time. And I would help with campaigns and help my mom and then others to get elected, always with the thought that if we as a people, as citizens, are to make what I uh, perceive as progress, that we need to support elected officials who are going to take us in that direction. And so I always did that from the sideline. And then I had the opportunity to sell my business. Someone wanted to buy it, and it wasn't the kind of sale where you could, retire for the rest of your life, but it was a successful sale. And looking for the next chapter in my life, interestingly, I went to work for Mayor Riley as the director of economic development for the city of Charleston, and I really learned kind of what worked and what didn't work around here. And so finally, when Mayor Riley retired after only serving for 40 years,
Wow.
I decided to take the plunge and offer myself for public service, and sure enough, I managed to get elected, and have been really enjoying it ever since. It's an incredible experience to be able serve the city of Charleston and whoever I can. You know, at the end of the day, I just have a philosophy that the meaning of life is about serving one another. And boy, you don't get much better opportunity to do that than in a position like this. So that's why it brings such great meaning to my life, and hopefully I'm able to, make a contribution.
Yeah, so you talk about service, and a lot of times people will say that as leaders, a good leader is one who serves. So, in what ways do you see your role as mayor in providing that servant leadership to the city of Charleston, but more importantly to Charlestonians?
Well, I believe a leader and a servant has to have big ears and be able to listen, and specifically listen to the dreams and aspirations of its citizens, and where that will take us as a people, as I say, as citizens together. Um, and so if you have a decent ear, and that gets back to my musical ability, there are all kinds of similarities there. You know, a jazz musician plays by ear, right? So he has to really be able to listen well and try to figure things out, and be able to improvise, but always try to excel and improve. And so I believe there was only one human that was perfect, and we all strive to get better.
Mhm.
And all systems that man has created can get better. And I hope that we as a human race are headed towards a direction of progress and improvement. And I could expound on that just philosophically, but I kind of feel like my job, and it's kind of my philosophy, is when I walk out that door at the end of every day, is to make Charleston a better place for our citizens and to help fulfill their aspirations.
Mm, I love that. And and keeping in line with music, how do you find the right way to strike harmony, so to speak? As a leader, I'm pretty sure that you encounter lots of challenges, so how do you find that, how are you able to find that right balance?
Right. Well, and I must tell you, the last year seems to have brought out the best in some folks, and then not so much in some other folks.
Yeah.
And it's been a little challenging. But I think the number one starting place is to treat people respectfully, with respect, and recognize our joint humanity, and acknowledge with the diversity of people and opinions that we have, that you're not always going to agree with everything that I say or you say, that anyone says, but to respect their opinion, their point of view, try to come to consensus as to what's best for the overall good, for the common denominator, for the overall concept of moving us to a better place.
Yeah. And I guess in doing that, what type of challenges have you encountered? You know, I'm pretty sure you've encountered a lot, but what type of challenges have you encountered, and what have you learned from those experiences?
Well, we've encountered various challenges, some of which are not even our own making. Like Mother Nature.
Oh, yeah.
Um, we when I ran for mayor in 2015, it was just 3 weeks before the election that we had a big storm, the Great Flood of 2015. And, that was the biggest flooding that the city and the low country in South Carolina had seen since Hurricane Hugo. And it might have been a one-off, but then we had Hurricane Matthew the next year.
Yes.
And then we had Hurricane Irma the next year. And then we had hurricane, every year there was another threat of a hurricane. And what really became crystal clear was it wasn't just the one-offs of an occasional hurricane, but it was the combined effects of climate change on our planet. The temperatures slowly but gradually rising, the sea level slowly but gradually rising. And so I'll be honest with you, for the last 5 years, one of the main challenges that I've dealt with in our city has been this whole existential threat of flooding and sea level rise. Yeah. And if you think about the longer view, we've been here for 350 years. Well, we predict very reasonably that in the next 50 years, you'll see about 3 feet of additional sea level rise. We're measuring it every day out in the harbor. And we're so low, that's why we're known as the low country. 3 feet is huge. It's huge. If you pull out the map and see what happens when you add 3 feet of water everywhere, it's hugely impactful. And it's so big, so to speak. If you don't start dealing with it now, you'll be overwhelmed with the next generation. That's why I call it an existential threat. That's just one example. The other, I guess, example of challenge and opportunity that I think was so clear even when I ran in 2015 after the terrible tragedy of Mother Emanuel, is our racial conciliation. Yeah. And Liz, I got to tell you, I think God just put me in a place to try to help bring harmony and bring people together. And I could not believe in 2015 in June, when Mother Emanuel occurred. Yeah. And here I was running for mayor of the city I was born in, and thinking back that almost 50 years ago, I lived in Orangeburg where another racial massacre had occurred. And, you think about all the good that's happened and civil rights movement and laws that have changed. And it just hits me like a ton of bricks that there is so much more work that we can do to reconcile and come together and to make the attempt. It's not an overnight thing. It's a multi-generational thing to change people's attitudes and opinions about race. And racism is so endemic is the word I use. It's pervasive, and it got down into everything, if you know what I mean, into housing policy, into policing policy, and literally economic policy, every aspect of life, to where, particularly after the civil rights movement, and the lunch counters aren't segregated. You're too young, but I remember in Orangeburg when I went to the movies as a kid, and I sat downstairs, and African Americans had to be in the balcony. And this is an admission I'm going to make to you, Liz, and to this program. And this really brought home to me the concept of white privilege. As a white person, you might not be thinking all the time, oh, I'm a real privileged person. It was, when you grew up in the society. But something that really hit home with me? What? When I was in the 5th grade, I used to bowl at that bowling alley.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I was
All
allowed to
sparkling alley.
bowl at Tri-County Triangle Lanes because I was white boy,
Hmm.
you know? And those students weren't allowed because of the color of their skin, right? And I was privileged in that sense. I mean, I didn't think about it at the time.
Right.
Uh, I've reflected on it now, and it taught me in reflection how endemic, how as I'd say, infused racism had become in our society. And anyway, that's part of what led me to service as well. And we're on a mission, I feel, as a people to try to reconcile and bring respect and bring what I believe is was recognized but never practiced by our founding fathers, that we're all given God-given rights that are equal in pursuit of happiness and life and liberty. We're still trying to achieve that vision.
Yeah.
And the history of our country is such that we were far off the mark for a long damn time, you know?
Yeah, I thank you for that. I don't speak for every Black person, but I will say that a lot of times, when I talk to my friends and coworkers and associates, the one thing that we do hope is that um, our brothers and sisters, our white Americans would just be open, right? Just be open to the idea of seeing how some of the access that they've had to certain things that like my father, growing up did not have. He grew up in Baltimore. And so he tells me the stories about, you know, like you said, sitting upstairs and not being able to try on clothing when they go to stores. And, even coming to the South, they had to, pack lunches and dinners because they couldn't go to certain restaurants when they came down south. So I thank you so much for just being open and reflecting on how you've grown up and just kind of looking at that as an adult. I think that's a start, you know what I mean? And then being in your position as mayor, um, being intentional about looking for opportunities, as you said, to make a difference. It's what's needed. And when you think about a lot of corporations and businesses, they're looking at what's happening socially. And so when you're thinking about leadership and where we are today, what advice would you give to leaders that are facing um, these type of situations and they're trying to figure out how their business or company can make a difference as it relates to, the social unrest, social injustices that we're seeing all across the country?
Right. Well, I get back to listening, and I think it's not just listening uh, in a focused way, but also in a broad way. And that's where you get to this maybe overused word already of diversity, that we all have, different life experiences and different viewpoints. And so as a leader, I feel like you need to get a good sampling, of all those viewpoints and that diversity that's out there in order to inform yourself as to a thoughtful and meaningful path forward, no matter what the issue at hand might be. And that can be true when it comes to even dealing with climate change. It can be true when dealing with housing issues or economic empowerment and issues of promoting our local businesses. So I would just advise leaders to try to keep as open-minded as you can, and you like you use that word intentional. I think you have to be intentional to seek out those diverse opinions to make sure you're being thoughtful enough about the whole picture.
And once you have, well, let me back up, because I like the fact that you said that it's not just diversity in terms of people, right? It's also diversity in ideas and thoughts.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
once you have that, once you listen and taken that all in, how do you move forward in making decisions, as mayor?
Well, I am a strong mayor, so I get to make some administrative type decisions
Yes.
After that thoughtful process, hopefully. But on many decisions, I have to have the approval of my city council. So it's important to work closely with them. And it's important to engage our citizens. And like I said, listen to their aspirations, but even in working through an issue, as you discern what a good path forward is, check back in with your citizens. Make sure they provide a great compass for leadership. Make sure that they're with you, for lack of a better expression, because that helps put the rubber on the road and make things happen when you have the buy-in from your citizens, your stakeholders, and that allows you to be able to move forward and get something done. Of course, it always helps to have a little money, though. We're always looking for resources and monetary resources to make things happen.
You said that you're a strong leader. What do you think makes you a great leader?
Well, I said I'm a strong mayor. And I don't judge myself in that sense. It's the form of government. They call it a strong mayor form of government where the mayor is the CEO, as you mentioned earlier. There are some cities where you have a weak mayor form of government, where the town or the city will hire a full-time administrator that runs the city, and then the mayor, the weak mayor, is more ceremonial and like another member of council. But in Charleston, the form of government that was selected back in the 70s was a strong mayor form of government, which I think was traditional here ever since Charleston was founded. So in addition to being a policy leader, I'm also the CEO of the city.
Got you. Thank you. Thank you so much for explaining that to me. But as we talk about leadership, I guess if you were grading yourself, what do you think makes you a great leader?
Well, different leaders have different styles, Some leaders think of the word strong as being overbearing, maybe, or being able to twist the arm to get things going. My style is a little more laid back, starting with the listening, but then building consensus and working with enough people to get the approvals needed to make something happen. It's just the way I've come along in life, I guess, in my style. So it doesn't work for everybody. I know there are many cases where putting the fist down might have worked better for somebody else, but for me, listening and building consensus is the way I've practiced.
You mentioned a little bit earlier about I love, by the way, how you said your citizens, or gauging your I guess success, so to speak, by your citizens, that they are a compass. I love that. And I'm pretty sure that being mayor, you have to work with a lot of people, businesses, and your constituents, and as you've mentioned, your city council. How are you able to use the art of persuasion to get people to kind of line up with your thinking and maybe even your vision for the city?
Yeah, well, I don't know that communication is my strongest skill. Some people say I do better playing the piano, but I certainly try. I think just being in touch with folks and trying to communicate your ideas, your vision, if you will, on any particular issue is helpful. I just like to think that my overall perception of humankind and the need for us to progress together has built some consensus on my council and amongst our citizens about providing more affordable housing, for example, about protecting our city from climate change and from sea level rise. And when you really dig in deep, I get in the weeds on these topics, and my wife says I'm particularly obsessed with plumbing right now. When I say that, I mean like the plumbing of the whole city and how we drain. I really get in the weeds on how things work, and maybe this is my chemistry side coming through, and I try to know as much about a topic as anybody, that to the extent possible as my uh, capacity allows, and really be knowledgeable about these issues. I can tell you a lot about affordable housing and what makes that happen, and the challenges that are there to build and create affordable housing. So the things that really rise to the top as issues, I try to do my homework and know what I'm talking about. I may not be the most eloquent guy. It may take me, I might have to struggle a little bit to get that idea across, but I try to know it well enough that in the end, I'll get through to you.
I love that. That's pretty much how I am. Something comes in my way, I want to make sure that I fully understand it. I think sometimes it's to a fault, um, because I won't make a decision until I've understood the whole picture. And so sometimes that can kind of slow me down.
That's right. No, I hear you.
Someone who is a dominant leader, and they want, you got to, let's go, let's go, let's go. It's like, wait a minute. Oh, there's one more thing I need to figure out before
That's
we
right.
move forward.
Yeah, it's not wise to make decisions just to do something. You can end up being impetuous, or pulling the trigger too fast on things. So, sometimes the option for a little while is to wait and
Yeah,
figure it out.
I agree with you. We're here.
Mhm.
Well, listen, I know you have to get ready to go, but I just have two more questions for you.
Sure.
You said you enjoy being mayor of Charleston. What do you enjoy most about being mayor of the city of Charleston?
Mm. Well,
Is
there
that
are
a hard
lots of things.
question?
That's a hard question because, I love this city so much that there's many parts of it that bring me joy. But the thing I think maybe the most is it's really odd, maybe even sometimes the little things you're able to do to help someone to get something done, and it could be as simple as um, I don't know, helping connect them to get the service they need from someone, or a repair of something that helps the drain flow a little better. The hug from the little girls I was getting last night when I went to a community neighborhood function for the first time in a year. You know, the feeling that I get, you know, people remember how they feel about things, you know, more than anything else. And I think about how I feel when our citizens come together in a loving, respectful way. And boy, that puts me over the top and keeps me going for another day.
I love that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you lead with your heart to a certain extent.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of funny. You know, like I said, I came to this business kind of late in life. I was in my early 60s when I ran or first got elected. And you know, you'd write out this long thing and read it word to word, and it didn't work. You know your people, know your city, know that, and then let it come from your heart. I think is it's certainly a lot simpler.
I love that. And so speaking of heart, what is your heart for Charleston? What's your vision for the future of Charleston?
Well, I brought with me a little list here of our priorities for the year. If this gives you any um, clue as to some of the things we're working on, and coincidentally, they work right with the objectives of South Carolina State 1890 program. First on my list, foster economic empowerment to build an inclusive and equitable community. Boy, in these days, I can't think of anything more powerful to try to do. And then I talk about flooding and sea level rise, which I've already spoken with you about, and affordable housing and public safety. Maintain public safety in a way that respects and protects all our citizens.
Mm.
And lastly, to preserve the neighborhood livability and resident quality of life that makes our city so special. And those are right in a line with what this 1890 program does, thinking about economic empowerment, about quality of life. And I'm going to close on that because I'm, again, so excited about the partnership that we will share together with the 1890 Center here in Charleston. Thank you.
Yes, that definitely aligns with 1890. And, you know, like I said at the top of the hour, we are so excited about our partnership with the city of Charleston. And we're just looking forward to continuing to make an impact in the city. And so I just want to thank you so much, Mayor Tecklenburg, for taking time out of your schedule to talk to us about your leadership philosophy and how you work to make Charleston a better place to live and work in. So thank you so much for being a partner with SC State 1890.
God bless. We do that together.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz.
This wraps up another episode of SC State 1890 Elevate Leadership Podcast. If you've enjoyed this show and want to check it out again, head on over to your favorite streaming platform. We appreciate your continued support, and we'll see you next month.